Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Christ has risen.
Christ has risen indeed.
It's time to hear one of God's stories. This is the desert box. Inside is a small piece of the desert. And so many important things happened in the desert that we just have to have a small piece of it in this room. The desert is a strange and wild place, and at night it's cold, but in the day it's burning hot. There's almost no water at all, and the desert is always changing. The wind comes and it blows shapes and molds in the desert, and it's never the same. Once, the children were very hungry. They were starving. Their tummies ached. They cried at night, even with their parents around them. They wept. They cried at night, even when they were asleep, and their parents heard them. But there was no food, and they knew they had to find food. So the people of God crossed the desert to the land of Egypt. They stayed, but one day a new king called a Pharaoh wanted the people of God for slaves. Pharaoh caught them in a trap. He would not let them go. The people of God had to do what the Pharaoh said. They had to work very hard. They had to live where Pharaoh said. They had to go to bed when the Pharaoh said, and they couldn't do anything on their own. And the people cried and cried. They cried for help, and they cried for God to hear them. And God did hear them. God spoke to Moses, and he said, Moses, go to the Pharaoh. Let God's people go. Moses went to the Pharaoh, and he said no. Moses went to the Pharaoh again, and the Pharaoh said yes. So Moses rushed back to the people, and he told them that he could help them, that God had helped. The people of God were ready. They had to hurry before Pharaoh changed his mind. So they took unleavened bread because there wasn't time. They must go quickly, quickly. And they did. They moved quickly, left everything behind. They stayed together, and they moved towards a great sea. After they had gone many many miles. Through the desert. What would they do? Fearing at any moment they could hear the sound of Pharaoh's army chasing after them. Chariots and men chasing them. They heard the war chariots. Pharaoh's army was coming. They were pressed against the water and they were trapped. Moses cried to God, and God showed Moses a way. He showed him a way, and the waters parted in front of Moses. They safely crossed the sea. And when all of God's people had passed safely through this miracle, the sea closed behind them. They were safe and free. The people of God were so happy. They were free. They wanted to thank God, and they did. They gave many, many thanks and sang. They led in dancing and rejoicing. Now I wonder how it feels to be so hungry and so thirsty. And I wonder how the parents felt when they had no food for their children. I wonder how scared they felt when there was nowhere else to run, when they stood at the sea. I wonder how it felt to be trapped. I wonder how it felt when God led them through the water and to freedom. I wonder how Moses felt leading the people this way. I wonder if you have ever felt trapped in one place, like you couldn't get out. The story we heard today is in the book of Exodus. As we light the Christ candle and listen to God's words, sit back and enjoy the light. When the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hands over the sea so that the water comes back and covers the Egyptians, their chariots, and their cavalry." So Moses stretched out his hands over the sea. At daybreak, the sea returned to its normal depth, and the Egyptians were driven toward it, and the Lord tossed the Egyptians into the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the cavalry. Pharaoh's entire army that had followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. The Israelites, however, walked on dry land through the sea. The waters formed a wall for them on the right and on the left. And the Lord rescued Israel from the Egyptians that day, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the amazing power of the Lord against the Egyptians, and the people were in awe of the Lord. They believed in the Lord and their servant Moses. As we enjoy the Christ candle, think about our story today and how, if in our own lives you feel trapped, God will show us the way and lead us to freedom. May the light of the Christ candle and its warmth and love be with you now and always.